We are on Eruvin, Perek Aleph, Mishnah Zion. So we're going to continue talking about lechi. Okay, so we've talked about the lechi. How wide does it have to be? How tall the minimum height is? So you normally assume a lechi is a piece of wood or plastic or whatever. But our Mishnah is going to talk about what else can a lechi be made out of. Says the Mishnah, B'chol osin lachayan. You can make a lechi basically out of anything. Even basically something that's alive, not a plant, an animal. So I just want to say, I've been looking around the internet for more charts, and I found this incredible book called Perush Chaya Masechet Eruvin on Hebrew books from Chaim ben Liber Mordechai Parush. So I downloaded it, so we're going to see. So he has a bunch of nifty charts. So he basically shows you. The Gemara in Sukkah talks about what it's going to move. So the Gemara says no. It means that you tied up the animal. Let's make this a little bit bigger so you can see it. The Gemara says no. It must mean here you tied up the animal, and if you look at it the way he drew it, the Gemara says it has to be. What if it falls? So it has to be in a way that you tied it up that even if it falls, then the animal is not going to move. So it's not very practical, but it's theoretically we'll say it's theoretically interesting. It's theoretically interesting that's how you be able to make a lechi. Meaning, as long as it's something that's standing on the entrance of the mavoi, it's okay. Rabbi Yossi oser. Rabbi Yossi prohibits it. Why? He says, Chayshin Hashem etamut. What if it dies? You'll say, but second, even if it dies, it's gonna still be tied up. So it's still gonna be a lechi. So the Gemara says, Rabbi Yossi's afraid it's only 10 tvachim high. And if it dies, poor donkey's gonna slump down. Right? He's gonna, like that. And it's gonna be under 10 tvachim and people are not gonna notice it. That's the nature of the machloket. Okay. Umetameh mishum golel. What else can I use a live animal for? So there's something called a golel. A golel is a machloket what the golel is. Okay, but there's the golel. If you make it a golel for a kever, when you bury somebody, there's a context called there's a halachic principle called stimata golel, and stimata golel means that's considered the end of the burial service, and then people can say kaddish and move on, which we don't do until after you're done with the closing of the golel. That's considered the closing of the grave. Okay, so now let's say, for example, I don't know, we don't have the dirt or whatever, and the family's tired and it's late or whatever, and it's not going to bring dirt for 2 hours. So I want to take my cow or my ox and stick it on the grave, and so then we can get on with it. In addition, so in the times of the Mishnah, of Golel, I think I found a couple of interesting pictures. Here we are. In the times of the Tanaim, right, you could see that, like nowadays, they build up, this is the kever of Hananiah ben Akasha, and they built up this outside thing. But in reality, all it was, let's see if I can find another picture, it was a hole in the side of the mountain. They would dig out. This is actually today's Gemara in Baba Batra. They would dig like a cave, and in the cave they would put small holes. And what they would do actually, they would very often, they would, after a period of time, a year, 3 years, they would recollect the bones of the nifter. They would wait till the flesh decomposed, and then they would recollect the bones and bury them somewhere else. And that way they could reuse the grave. So how do you know if you're going to recollect the bones, they would leave the body to decompose, but they wouldn't cover it with dirt. They wouldn't encase it with dirt, because then it would be impossible to recollect the bones. It's very, very difficult. So rather, what they would do is they would place the body in the crypt, and then they would just close it off. And that's why it's called a golel. Golel means liglol, means golel golalim, galgalim, means to roll. So according to the Tanna Kama says, "Mitamei mishum golel." An animal can serve as a golel. It can serve as the rock, as the stone that closes off the grave. Rabbi Meir mitaher. Rabbi Meir says it can be tahor. Why? Detamid Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir says, "Kol mechitza haomeret beruach hayim ena mechitza." There's no such thing as a live mechitza, a live boundary. Okay, I mean you cannot use it as a golel. It doesn't count as a golel. Finally, what else can you use an animal for? You can write a get. Let's say you want to give a get to a woman, so normally you write it on a piece of paper. You write the exact text, and you give it to her, and then she takes it and say you are divorced, and then you're done. What happens if all I have is a donkey? I can write it on a deer. So I can write it on the horn of the deer, not cut off the horn, but I can write it on the horn of the deer, and then say, here, this is yours. So the Tanna Kama says, yeah, why not? I mean, it seems a little unusual, but you're allowed to write on the Gitei Nashim. So let's go back to the Mishnah. Rabbi Yossi Aglili Posel. Rabbi Yossi Aglili says, so you can't work. So you always ask yourself, who's more obvious? Is the Tanna Kama more obvious, or is Rabbi Yossi Aglili more obvious? So at first you think it's ridiculous. Of course you can't use an animal to as a get. But then you start to think to yourself, why not? What's the difference? Why is a piece of paper better than a cow? So the Gemara says, Rabbi Yosef Galili is supposed to sell because it says v'katav la sefer. You have to write it on a sefer. Ma sefer ein bo ruach chayim. Most books are not alive. Af kol she'ein bo ruach chayim. So anything that's not alive. So the Rabbi Yosef Galili says, forget it. Again, the Chachamim say that's the drasha, but we don't use that word sefer to tell you that. It has to be a sefer dvarim. It tells you about what you have to write, not the nature of the actual item that you give to your wife as you divorce her. It's a very interesting machloket. So I doubt it's very relevant to halacha l'maisa. Most people I know aren't going to use an animal for their lechi, for their mavoi, but, what are you going to do? The Gemara talks in theoretics and the Mishnah about theoretical things that are relevant halachically and often very interesting as well. We'll stop here. As always, if you have comments or questions, you can email me at rspolter@gmail.com. And we'll dedicate the learning to the memory of my father, Rav Simcha ben Yitzchak Kalman. Have a good day.